so when I moved back, I went through this really tough period where it was like, wow, God's not a robot, and I've built so much of what I think I need to do as a Christian around that God expects me to do A, B, and C, and if I do A, B, and C, then I get D. And it's like, no, it doesn't really work that way.
Welcome to the Extraordinary Lives podcast, where we talk about lives that go beyond the ordinary to the extraordinary, with the extra being Jesus. We'll be encouraged with amazing stories and helpful insights from the lives of ordinary people who have that extra, that supernatural difference that only Jesus can give. I'm your host, Ellen Bennett. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Hayley and Micah Lyle. I am so excited to interview you today. Hayley is my beloved daughter, and Micah is my beloved son-in-law. So we were so excited to get him as part of the wedding a couple years ago. They will have been married 2 years in October.
Honored to be here.
Thanks for having us on the podcast.
Yes. So this is actually part 2 of the podcast. And the way we left it was we had heard all about Micah and Hayley's experiences growing up and their times during college and after college. And today's show is especially about how they started dating and about the fun wedding. So Micah, how did you two get back together? Here's Hayley over in India. You're back here. You have graduated from Berkeley. What happened?
I worked on a nonprofit with a gal I met from Berkeley for a year and a half. Very difficult to do. Well, it probably wasn't the best combo, but we learned after the fact, as you do. So I eventually moved back home and was just renting for my parents. And I was doing a lot of freelance software engineering because I picked up a lot of skills trying to launch a web platform from scratch myself. And I was a computer science major as well. So I had some freelance software skills and was trying to grow those and really enjoying that. Really enjoyed moving back to Encinitas. I didn't like the Bay Area as much in terms of living environment. So I had more free time than pretty much any other point in my life, probably. One of the things I think I learned in my formative years at Berkeley, this was very difficult, was that God is not a robot. He is always telling me exactly what to do, and I have no say in the matter type thing. And so that was difficult because, you know, with the nonprofit I launched, I thought, well, this must be God's will for my life. And there was no room for like, well, is this a good idea to launch in the first place? Are there other ideas that could be great as well? Or how would this line up financially to do a nonprofit instead of a for-profit? And, you know, I just didn't think about any of that. I was just like, well, this is like a good idea. This could really impact lives. This could bring testimonies, you know. And so when I moved back, I went through this really tough period where it was like, wow, God's not a robot. And I've built so much of what I think I need to do as a Christian around that God expects me to do A, B, and C. And if I do A, B, and C, then I get D. And it's like, no. Doesn't really work that way. And so one of the things I think I wanted after realizing this was I was ready to have a dating relationship. I really wanted that. I wanted something where there could be conflicts. I wanted something where there could be arguments, where someone could be annoyed at someone else and you had to work through things and there was ups and downs and there was a natural relationship. And as weird as that was, I think I wanted that because I wanted to know what that was like again. Because we have a relationship with God, and you know, so God can have opinions, he can have feelings, we can have opinions, we can have feelings. We can have conflicts, and it's by far and mostly enjoyable and wonderful. But like you work through things, you get to know each other better. So I wanted that. And I knew Hayley was moving back, and I knew that she was coming back from India. And we chatted a lot over the course of time, not very frequently, but we'd had a number of conversations. And we'd hung out a lot in summers in between colleges with our group of friends as well. So we were good friends, and it was just exciting that she was going to be coming back. And I was like, well, she's beautiful. And she was getting into writing this biography when I was freelancing. So I thought that was really cool because I always wanted to date someone that really loved what they did. And I love the way that God's gifted me and made me and the things that I've gotten to learn as well. I genuinely enjoy it. And so I wanted to date someone that had things that she loved and was pursuing. Hayley came back and I had to work through all these things I learned with the Lord, which was like, wow, I could ask her on a date. She could say no. There's no like perfect way to do this that's going to guarantee a yes. There's no like perfect formula. And as weird as it sounds, it was really hard for me the first few months dating because I tried so hard to like make everything just right so that I would maximize my probability of a yes. But like I still knew like, you know what? over time, I realized I can't do this forever. So she's going to like me for who I am or not. And that's part of a relationship. And that's part of especially like marriage specifically. She's going to love me for who I am or not. And there's not a ton I can do. Like, there's certainly in the beginning, there's things you can do to make yourself look more attractive and get her interested,
Let's just say yes. Beautiful flowers, delicious chocolates.
The flowers and chocolates, they work. Let me tell you.
And yeah, I'm not saying like don't do anything. No, like do everything. But at the end of the day, eventually they have to come and accept you for who you are. And eventually they're going to see you when you don't have all your flowers and your chocolates and, your plans all lined up for date night. And it's just like, they're going to have to see you when you're not doing well. And so it's good to do those things in the beginning, but I eventually got to the point where, you gotta let her see me all the way. So that was really fun because I learned more about God's love in dating, I think, than I did in lots of years of prayer and evangelism and time at Berkeley and all this stuff. I learned more about God's love in pursuing a romantic relationship because I see how he loves us, and I see how he wanted covenant with Israel, and I see how he craves relationship with and from us, and how he can pursue us and we can reject him. Yeah, it's a crazy thing to think about love and loss and like fear of rejection and all those things. And so I learned more about God's love through dating because I realized he literally loves me unconditionally, and he is the only 100% safe place where I come to him, he will never reject me. He loves me, and there's nothing I have to do to earn it. And I realized a lot of these things, they became experiential truths in my life and not just some rational thought when I was dating, because I'm like, oh, wow, I see where God's love is so powerful because this is how he loves. And so it was fun dating Hayley because we had a lot of really fun dates and adventures, and dating was really sweet. But yeah, I learned more about God's love from dating than anything else in my life, I would say.
Wow, that's really exciting. And Micah, you mentioned wanting to learn from relationships more about conflict. You wanted to experience all of that. But with Hayley, you just have not gotten that opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that was one of his goals because just my personality type. I am not afraid of conflict, and I actually really appreciate the clarity that comes from working through things. So choosing to date me meant that we had lots of great moments to address conflict, at least, and work through them, which was actually a huge thing that we had to grow in our relationship because I was very comfortable talking about conflict and working through it. And I think it was terrifying for you at first. And for me, I think throughout our relationship, especially as it progressed and started to get more serious, I had to really grow in a few areas. But one of them was learning how can I create a safe space for Micah where he can share really what's on his heart, and trying to be more gentle in that and learning to listen and really keep my heart soft in that. But the other thing too was just knowing, this is something that Micah was growing in, and I know a lot of the things that you went through in college was really difficult conflict that you had to work through. And so I remember just this moment in our relationship just realizing, oh my gosh, I'm not trusting Micah, and I'm not trusting the work that the Lord is doing in Micah and his healing from this past conflict that I feel like is coloring the way that we were working through conflict in our relationship. And just that realization of, wait, God is at work in Micah, and God's already done so much to heal Micah. And I don't need to be the agent of healing or, working through this. I can trust that God is already at work, and God has already done so much in Micah's life. Because I think maybe I'd started kind of micromanaging too, and trying to figure out, okay, like, is something wrong? Like, Micah, tell me what's happening. What's going on in your heart, to the point where it was not helpful and slightly micromanaging. And so that moment of realizing, even though I feel nervous about this, and I think maybe there was some judgment in there and just us being different in this area, it's like I need to actually extend this trust before I see the result. And it was a really profound moment in our relationship where, for me, that opened my heart up to Micah so much more. And it opened my eyes to see Micah in such a better way. And extending that trust before I felt it, or before I had my assurance of, oh, I see it, therefore I can trust, was this catalyst for me in our relationship that ironically really freed Micah. Like, he wasn't trying to prove something to me anymore, and he wasn't under my scrutiny in this area. And maybe, the realm of conflict is a really weird place for that to be, but and for our relationship and just for me, that was where it really came up a lot. And yeah, I had to learn to extend that trust first. So that was really cool for me to learn. And gosh, there's so many other ways, but when it came to my relationship with God too, I had had so much fun with God, with it just being me and him. And I loved what we had going for us. I loved the adventures that we had been on, just me and God. And I had so much hope for the future of future things that I would get to do with God, future adventures to go on with God. And the idea of getting married was this thing in my life of, wait, am I giving something up here? And what am I giving up? And when it came to my relationship with God, there was this fear of giving up that intimacy that I had with him by being just me and him, getting to go on these adventures. And so that was really also growing for me, because I had to then trust. And I had seen God nudging me in all sorts of ways that God was a big fan of Micah. I definitely had that encouragement. Just our relationship was so sweet and true to the Lord. God was always just in it, a part of it. It was a relationship where if God wasn't in it, it wasn't worth our time, because our lives both are all about God. But I just remember praying about it and feeling like the Lord was telling me, Hayley, life is fun, just you and me, but there's so many exciting things that you will get to do with Micah if you decide to marry him. And it's like, Hayley, life's better with Micah. And right. I feel like, being a very independent person myself, I was able to see how, again, that commitment to each other really opens up this new realm of intimacy and possibilities. And so, yeah, trusting that and taking that step into something new and unknown has been such a wonderful and sweet thing.
That's fantastic. I also think of the saying that sometimes we want to be the Holy Spirit for our spouse. And I remember thinking that sometimes with myself, that I'm trying to be Steve's Holy Spirit instead of just letting the Holy Spirit work. So it sounds like maybe a little bit of that was in play. But boy, just to see how you and really the Lord helped you reason that out and even see that is very astute and really shows the Lord's work as well. I would love to hear some fun stories about the wedding, which happened to be during COVID. So that was kind of crazy to throw together. And let me just say that what most people remember about your wedding and the reception is the bathroom. So be sure to include that as well.
Yeah, it was really, really sweet. Hayley did feel like a large majority of the work in planning our wedding, but we explored a lot of different ideas. It was fun because COVID hit right before we got engaged, so things were locked down in March. I proposed in June, and we didn't want to be engaged that long. We were thinking like 4 to 5 months. So with that, it was like, well, we're going to get married. And this is where I think the Lord's peace and just his comfort is such a wonderful thing, because we're like, all right, we're going to just step out in faith and trust that we can actually even have a wedding. And we both wanted to have a wedding. We both dreamed of having a wedding. And yeah, it was stepping into this uncertainty where, again, huge shout out to Hayley here for all the work she did. But, we had a venue booked, we had all these things planned, and all those plans fell through. And then a wonderful friend of mine prayed for me for many years. She offered to let us have the wedding at her house. And that was really cool. And
it was beautiful venue.
It was just such a wonderful wedding.
Yeah, I think one of those things too early on for us was realizing there was really cool options of getting married somewhere more remote, and Micah and I love the mountains, and so there's this beautiful place in Mammoth that might be open just in this meadow where we could have a very small wedding if we wanted to. And the coolness factor was super big. But as we were thinking about it, there's so many precious people in our lives that we really wanted, when we were honest with ourselves, to have a wedding where we could have a lot of people. And being in the middle of COVID, we didn't really know what that would look like, but we figured at least inviting people, because everybody at this point knows planning a wedding in COVID, nobody knows what's actually going to happen. But just even inviting people as a first step was our way of saying, hey, we really appreciate you in our lives. And we want you in some capacity, even if it's just opening this invitation from us to be a part of this moment in our lives. And so I think with that and knowing that desire that we had, that was also a much bigger step in faith of saying, okay, Lord, there's a lot of people we want to invite. And still we had to really keep the list down, even with that. But it was a pretty big step of faith just to be like, okay, Lord, this is what we want. We know what we really want, and we're going to plan in the best way possible to make this happen. But at the end of the day, we have very open hands for what can happen. So I took it as kind of a fun project to strategize. How can I plan a wedding where there's a million possibilities of how this could turn out? And trying to stay as agile as possible throughout the process, which huge props to my mom. That was terrifying for her. Yes. Very uncomfortable, but she was an amazing support system in that and encouragement.
Yeah.
I could not have planned the wedding without her.
Yeah. I loved every part of our wedding. I only have one regret, which is that everybody loved these luxury porta-potty toilet things we had that played classical music and had angels coming, playing trumpets and singing to you. So, but I mean, I don't know.
Some chandeliers too.
Yeah, but I never actually went to the bathroom at the wedding. I guess I was just
major regrets.
A little too excited. I don't know.
The wedding was thrown together because our venue never did end up opening up, which we knew was a possibility. Everything happened at private properties. And so our rehearsal dinner was at Micah's parents' house, and our wedding ceremony was at our friend's house who had a lot of space and amazing views. So we got to allow whoever wanted to come, which turned out to be 100 people, over 100 people. Mm-hmm. Unheard of for COVID times. Yes. And let me just say this loud and clear, nobody got COVID from our wedding.
Yes.
That was cool.
And then our reception, which we did have to limit the numbers of the reception, but that was at my parents' house where I grew up. And that was just precious. And honestly, one of my favorite things about the wedding was just that, here we are hoping to get married, and there's a ton of work to do in getting the place ready. And there's no way we can do it on our own. And just the way that our community surrounded us was just precious. We had people from church coming to help hang up lights and wash the fence, and people, honestly, that we couldn't even invite to the wedding were so excited to pitch in and help. There was some guys from the church that built us this whole wedding arbor that was just so beautiful to get married under. And we just felt so loved and blessed by the community. And I think there's different ideas about weddings. For some people, they've been dreaming of exactly every little piece of their wedding for years and years. But for Micah and I, the wedding was really about the people and the community. And that was in our heart. And I think the Lord just made it that 10 times more just about the community. And the fact that friends and family traveled, to come and see us. Some of them flew at that time. My own grandma was stubborn and was like, I'm not missing this wedding. She at that point was almost 80 years old and I think very nervous about COVID, but she chose to fly anyways. All of that just meant so much in the middle of a crazy pandemic. So
yes. Thank you to everyone who helped, friends and family. I also think about the community, how important that was to you. And I loved that about your wedding, that you had seen so many people really build into your lives. And it was so important to you that they be a part of this moment, because they have been instrumental really in getting you to this moment and helping you become who you are and then who you are for each other. So very sweet, precious times.
Yeah,
Great.
I think it was cool reflecting on it of the things I've learned from the Lord over the years, and still I feel like I'm learning. And well, the wedding was one of those things where it's like we don't have any control over the outcome, so we really have to trust the Lord from the beginning. And this is a situation that we can apply as much as we can, but things could change, and we could end up with a totally different thing. So it's out of our hands, and why worry about it? Let's just be ready to take on whatever comes up and be flexible. And it's cool because I feel like one of the things that Jesus has brought in my life is that peace that transcends understanding, where if things aren't working out how I'm planning or expecting it in life, that is okay. Let's turn to the Lord. Let's turn to what he's doing and trust him, because I may not exactly know right away, and that's okay. I would like to know, I may not. And all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose, is what the Bible says. So it's like, wow, I get to trust that this is all working out for good. There's so much peace there, and there's no worry. There's no, I'm in control of everything type thing. And that's something that Jesus has brought to my life, in my personal life, in my work life, and everything like that. I think it's a wonderful thing that he's brought in, and something that Jesus adds that I don't see anything else that can give that.
That's great. Thank you so much. You two have really shared a lot about the true character of God, who he is, his love, his generosity, his care. So thank you. I do have one more question. You two have been very dedicated to trying to ponder more what God would have you do together and how you can work together, how you can be a team. Tell us a little bit about that. I know all of the plans aren't set yet, but I know you're developing a vision for that. So what is some of that vision that you have?
Yeah. So Micah has a background in being a brilliant mathematician and computer scientist. And for me, after writing the biography, I pivoted into something called user experience design, which is designing digital products. So any sort of app that somebody is using that has some sort of functionality, that's something that I would design. And so there are two jobs that fit really well together in the tech world. And so pretty much from the beginning, we've been just wondering, what could we do one day together? And I feel like we're getting to the point where we're both ready to really do that. I'd say we both are very entrepreneurial spirits. We both actually come from families that our dads didn't have super normal jobs. My dad was a freelancer his entire career in tech, funny enough. So he and Micah have a lot in common. They always say girls marry guys like their dads. And Micah's dad also had his own business working with hedge funds and things like that. But it's very fun to be self-employed together. We both have a few clients and have been growing our own business over the years. And talk about trust. It is just so fun to be in a place where we need to trust the Lord to bring us the right clients. And God has just made it very, very easy for us and has just really blessed us in that. And not giving us too many clients at one time and not giving us too little clients. It's very fun to get to do that together and with God. We've gotten to see the Lord working a lot already in that, but we're exploring ways that we can now bring our skill sets together.
I think we'd love to launch a product together at some point, and being in a relationship with God together, I believe the Jewish people see it as a marriage is three people. So it's the husband, wife, and the Lord. And he's like the third person of the marriage. And yeah, I think we've both had visions and dreams in our own hearts and minds for a long time. Things we've just kind of been brooding inside of us. I think for me, sometimes literally dreams I've had at night as well. And we're excited to explore how that looks. And it's really fun to be married. It's fun to be following the Lord together and to know that we have the God of the whole universe with us, walking with us. And there's so much joy and endless possibilities in that. And we're looking at the spaces that we're familiar with and some that we're less familiar with, and kind of just seeing where where do we want to enter in? And so praying and asking for wisdom with that, and really just trusting the Lord will lead us on this journey as well.
I do have to say, it's pretty cool that the ultimate architect, designer, coder of the world is the third person in our marriage.
Wow.
Yep.
And it's pretty fun that, I mean, for me, just thinking about designs, there's so many times I go to the Lord and I'm like, Lord, I know you are the ultimate designer. What you have designed is far more incredible than anything I could ever imagine. Can you give me a little help here? And it's really fun to imagine with the Lord. And we spend time praying and just asking the Lord for ideas. And yeah, it's hard to describe, but the Lord really does lead us in that. Even in, Micah has been doing some research on just different aspects of coding languages. And it just seems like the Lord has led you step by step in what you're learning about. So it's more just, a very fun thing to do with the Lord and invite him into.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for sharing about your relationship with each other, and then especially your relationship with the Lord, which is just so real. And that's exciting to see. It's inspiring to see. I think you really inspire me to want to grow closer to the Lord as well. So thank you. I love you guys. Love you, Micah. So grateful you're part of our family. And a huge shout out to Lori and Greg Lyle. Thank you for raising such a wonderful son. And thank you, Sierra, for being such an awesome sister. All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
All right.
And shameless plug, I did get Ellen the podcast software.
Yes.
She needed to go
Yes.
for it. So I'm grateful to be on the podcast, and this is a little intimidating. A massive lineup of wonderful people already. So, but it's good. We're excited.
I love it. I'm so grateful that you all really encouraged me and even kind of pushed me into this idea.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This is Ellen Bennett with the Extraordinary Lives podcast.